Hello and welcome to Left Coast Live. It is Thursday, April 17th, 2025. I am your host, Dieter McBusiness, joined as always by the one and only Stat Pat, stateless patriot of the Central Valley. We are California lefties talking to you about national politics, and we are going to start tonight with the AOC Bernie Sanders Fight Oligarchy tour, which is just shredding up social media on the left. And my understanding is you tried to go yesterday or the day before, and it was the day. I think it was Tuesday, wasn't it?
Tuesday, yeah, the day before.
You tried to go Tuesday, but you had some trouble getting in.
Yeah, I got there like a bit. I mean, way too late, honestly. If I had any chance of actually making it in, I should have been waiting in line from the beginning of the day. But I had work, obviously, so it just wasn't meant to be, unfortunately. But yeah, it's shitty, but I mean, there wasn't much I could do about it. I basically drove up there for nothing. I mean, all the parking was full. There's no way to like get into any entrance. And by the time I got there, Bernie had already started speaking. So it's just like, there wasn't. It ended up just being kind of pointless, unfortunately. But whatever.
Well, it's a testament to how popular they are.
Yeah, 30,000 people there, and it's a Republican county, so it's like, um, they drove a lot of people out for sure.
Do you want to react to them in Montana?
I was hoping that we could actually just listen to what AOC and Bernie said in Folsom, because I wasn't able to really even
Yeah,
listen to
okay,
much
because
of
I was
it.
trying to find that. I found the Montana ones. Stand by. I've got to find it
course.
for you.
Yeah.
What else is going on? So talk to me about Trump wanting to send people to El Salvadorian prisons.
Yeah, the mega complex there, the torture camp where you get in and you never get out.
And he wants to send just regular citizens there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if they say you've been charged with a crime or that you're a terrorist, then it's the new Guantanamo, basically. You know, they'll just send you there instead of keeping you in the American prisons for whatever reason. I guess the prison industrial complex must have a lot of stock invested in. It's called CCOT, down there in El Salvador, and it's I mean, terrifying is like the understatement of the century, because where ICE is detaining U.S. citizens,
Right, whoever they
where
want.
yes, yeah, it doesn't even matter. We just had someone detained at the Vermont Canada border, who was a U.S. citizen detained by ICE and questioned for several hours before being let go. According to 60 Minutes, 75% of the Venezuelans that were sent down there, I guess, yeah, which they were sent down there after, before the court was able to stop the plane from even, you know, reaching down there, I guess. Um, and they were sent down there anyway. Um, Apparently 75% of these Venezuelans had no criminal record at all. So we're not even sending criminals down there.
It's just a south of the border thing. If you come from the south of the border in any way, you are vulnerable. Even if the thing that I'm interested to see is if they go after people from south of the border that marry U.S. citizens. Now that would be a line. That would be a line to cross.
Right.
That would be a line to cross. All right. So you want to see Bernie and AOC in Folsom. Let's get AOC up here in Folsom.
Yeah. And we'll start off with AOC's speech.
Cortez.
There we go.
Cue the music. Oh, she's so much more than a politician, Stat Pat. She's a symbol.
We're how How far into this are we? An hour and 9 minutes.
Hold on. I'm going to turn that down. I'm going to turn you back up.
Okay.
I'm going to turn this down a little bit. I know it's not a stand-up comedy routine, but rule number one of stand-up comedy is you don't say how you doing to the audience. That's not the first thing you say.
Right.
Right.
Thank you all so much. You know, I heard that someone started flying a plane with a banner that said
Is it full? Is it full
Trump
volume?
country.
I can't really hear it that well.
It sure don't look like it
No.
today.
Yes, let's do it much louder. Yeah.
I don't think this is Trump country. I think this is our country. Because we're not afraid of them anymore, are we? I want to thank each and every one of you for making the effort to be here today. Thank you. I know it's really not lost on Bernie or myself, the sacrifice that it takes to take the time out of your day to get someone to cover your shift at work, to carpool, to figure out how to be here today. And we really cannot thank you enough, because
Wish I considered that when I went up there
together, being here
after work,
together,
and it's like,
meeting one
wait a minute,
another.
it's so crazy to even try to get in. You know, there's literally so many people, and it's like I wouldn't even get anywhere near close to the stage just because of how fucking. Apparently, the mile to get in was like 3 miles long. The line to get in was like, it's crazy.
Wow.
And I want everyone to
What
look
accent, Megan?
side to side. I want everyone to leave here today knowing someone new that you didn't know walking into this on the way out.
That would have been nice.
Because those are going to be the people right here that are going to change this country and change folks
put it at
in
1.25
the next
speed?
year or two. Isn't that right? My name is Alexandria. Some of you may know me as AOC. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for such a warm welcome. And we are all here together because we share in the frustration and the heartache that comes from watching those in power actively tear down or refuse to fight for everyday working Americans like us. We are here together because an extreme concentration of power, greed, and corruption is taking over our country like never before.
No, it varies a bit, Megan.
And we must acknowledge forthright the terrifying moment that we are in right now. That what we are hearing and seeing with our own eyes is, in fact, happening. We are watching as our neighbors, students, and friends are being fired, targeted, and disappear. It is real. People we love are being targeted and harassed just for being LGBTQ. Our coworkers, U.S. citizens, and immigrants alike are being disappeared off the street by men in vans with no uniform.
Yep, it's literally happening.
Are being fired for teaching American history accurately. And activists are being detained with no charge or evidence for using their First Amendment rights, especially if they are using those First Amendment rights to speak up for Palestinians and to end the war in Gaza.
Yeah.
In fact, the Trump administration admits that it has jailed a young father and husband, Mahmoud Khalil, without any evidence or charge of a crime. They admit that they've thrown Mahmoud in a cell thousands of miles away from his family because he attended a protest and they did not like the content of his speech.
Yeah,
I want to be very clear,
because it's
Folsom.
true, Megan.
Donald Trump's detention of Mahmoud Khalil for his speech is anti-American, and we demand his release, along with the release of Rumeisa Ozturk, who he is also jailing for writing an op-ed in her school paper. And we also demand the return of Kilmar, Abrego, Garcia in El Salvador. And we tell President Bukele, if we believe in democracy, he must be returned. It is criminal that he is being held abroad.
Like Bukele believes in democracy.
And we demand these things because we do have power in this moment. All of us do. Everyday people do. And it will never, ever, just be institutions or politicians and officials alone that uphold our democracy. It will always be the people, the masses who refuse to comply with authoritarian regimes, who are the last and strongest defense of our country and our freedoms. You, Folsom, you. We know that a better world is possible, and we are willing to do something about it. But to get there, we need to be honest about how we got to where we are right now. Because this moment did not come out of nowhere, Folsom. It has been a long time coming. The destruction of our rights and our democracy is directly tied to the growing and extreme wealth inequality that has been building in America for years. It is not a coincidence that billionaires like Elon Musk have dumped billions into this election to support Donald Trump.
Rumor has it Doge is actually committing treason, like according to a whistleblower of the NLRB.
Treason, eh?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. It's like, you know,
they're going to be picking up the pieces of this for the next 25 years, my man.
We have known that our political system has slowly but surely become dominated by big money and billionaires. And time after time, we have seen how our government and laws are more responsive to corporations and lobbyists than everyday people and voters. And we also know that the agenda of dark money to keep our wages low and to loot our public goods like Social Security and Medicare to give to the rich, we know that this is deeply unpopular with the American people, Republican, Independent, and Democrat alike. But just look at what Republicans in Congress have been quietly doing. They have been voting to advance cuts on hundreds of billions of dollars from Medicaid and veterans benefits so that they can take that money and give it to their donor class. All in the form of paying for tax cuts for the rich and sweetheart government contracts for their companies like SpaceX. And Folsom, you know who voted for that, by the way?
Gross.
The man who represents you right here in Congress, Kevin Kiley. But you know how many people are here in Folsom today? 26,000 of you have gathered to tell Kevin Kiley, hell no! Hands off our Medicare! Hands off our Medicaid! Hands off our Social Security!
Yeah, they're trying desperately to cut Medicaid.
That this is not what you want. He knows that it is deeply unpopular. He knows that it hurts the people of Folsom. But he is not there to serve working families. He is there to serve himself and the billionaire class that put him there. But he knows that the only chance he has to get away with such unpopular and destructive decisions is to stoke deep divisions along race, identity, and culture to keep all of us fighting and distracted.
Distracted by the culture war.
The big money playbook, not just now,
the right-wing magic trick.
And we are not
Check it out if you haven't already. For decades, and we are not going to fall for it anymore. But Folsom, this is why Donald Trump is not an aberration. He is the logical, inevitable conclusion of an American political system dominated by corporate and dark money. And if we are to defeat him, we must defeat the system that created him. Money in politics is the hand of oligarchy. America, we are at a crossroads. We can either have extreme wealth inequality with the toxic division and corruption that it requires to survive, or we can have a fair economy for working people along with a democracy and freedoms that uphold it. Oligarchy or democracy, but we cannot have both. I grew up in a working class family. My mom cleaned houses, and my dad worked on a small business. And my parents worked themselves to the bone so that my brother and I could just have a shot, the American dream. And for a moment there, it looked like we were going to make it. We had a home, bills were getting a little less stressful to pay, and I was doing well in public school. And what may have looked like a modest life to others was a dream come true for us. But suddenly, when I was a teenager, my dad was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. And after a long fight, we lost him. My dad actually passed away in September of 2008, just as the economy crashed in the Great Recession and millions of jobs across the country vanished. It felt like the little world of our family fell apart, just as the larger world was falling apart too. And overnight, my mom was left alone to figure out how to provide and put 2 kids through school, keep our house, pay off our medical bills, all on a house cleaner's salary. And that is how I became a waitress, to help pay the bills. Because at that time, just as it is now,
it was millions of working families who paid the price, while billionaires and thieves who defrauded our financial system got off richer than ever before.
Yep,
And not a single one of them went to jail.
Nope.
And now that is a story that Republicans mock. Not mine, but all of ours, when they say that a waitress or a working person is unqualified to serve in Congress. But the fact is, Folsom, many of us are far more qualified to know what real life is really like than any of them ever will.
That's exactly right.
And I tell this story not because it is special, but because of how common and normal it is, and how normal this barbarism is of how so many people are allowed to live today. And while the details may differ, so many of us knows what it feels like for life to be one bad day, one bad piece of news, or one major setback from feeling like it's all going to fall apart.
Never heard a Republican say that.
We don't have
Damn
to
right,
live
Megan.
like this anymore, Folsom. We can make a new
Republicans don't give
world,
half a-
Folsom,
half
a
a
better
shit
country
about the
where we
working
fight
class.
for the dignity of all people. And it looks like living wages, California. It looks like stable housing. It looks like guaranteed health care and respect for all our differences, no matter who we are or where we come from. Oligarchy
Bingo.
or democracy. And we are here today because we choose democracy. We choose freedom. And that means we must choose to out-organize the oligarchy. We must do away with the power of big money. And that is why, even as a waitress with a long shot campaign, I decided I would never take money from lobbyists or corporations, and it's why I never will. When I
I'm
first
saying
got
never
to
heard
Congress,
Republicans say working
I was
person is
genuinely
not qualified
shocked
for
by how the place
Congress.
worked, even having run against dark money in the first place. The
They
everyday
say so. They
influence
said
of
so
corruption
on
and dark
Fox like
money
all
was
the time,
astonishing.
especially when the squad was elected.
What they say?
Oh, Megan's saying I've never heard a Republican say a working person not qualified for Congress, and it's like they did it all the time. Like to this day, Republicans smear AOC. It's like, go back to being a bartender. It's like, you don't belong here. It's like ingrained in these people to dismiss fucking working class people when like more working class people should be representatives in Congress. Go ahead.
We have somehow conditioned ourselves in Congress to believe that it's normal for elected representatives who swear an oath to the American people to day trade individual stock and make millions with the sensitive information that we are
Both.
entrusted with for the purpose of governing. How can anyone possibly make an objective vote on healthcare, energy, or war when their personal money
Yeah.
is tied up in pharmaceutical companies,
According to them.
oil and gas companies, or defense company stocks? You can't. And we saw this play out this week with Trump's corrupt and disastrous tariff scheme. We can see now that his tariff shuffle didn't have anything to do with manufacturing like they claimed.
This right
I
here.
hope we recognize now that it was all about manipulating the markets so that he could quietly enrich his friends who bought the dip before reversing it all in the morning.
Did you know about this? How much
Yeah.
you know about
What
that?
I'm about to say is a
How much you know about the whole magic trick, the whole pump and dump market
The pump and dump?
manipulation thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's just standard operating procedure at this point for our system. I mean, the difference is just scale, scope, and context.
Yeah, no, of
It's a
course.
matter of fact. Donald Trump is a criminal. He was found guilty of 34 felony counts of fraud, liable for sexual abuse. Of course, he is lying and manipulating the stock market, too. And if Donald Trump wants to find the rapists and criminals in this country, he needs to look in a mirror today.
Oh, damn. Oh, she's cracking.
Yeah.
And to be clear, I don't care what party you are, Democrat or Republican. It doesn't matter how powerful
do.
one is or what position they hold. Members of Congress holding and trading individual stock is wrong. It is corrosive, it is destructive, and it needs to be banned.
It has allowed
just
for
this
a while
earlier this year, I
enrichment
was
for
named to
a
the
very
Energy and Commerce Committee in the
few
House of Representatives.
super rich people, Megan. That's what happened. And we're gonna go over the legal ego video, and there's a lot of shit in there you need to see.
You know, just earlier this year, I was named to the Energy and Commerce Committee in the House of Representatives. And this is one of the most powerful committees in all of Congress. It oversees 2/3 of the American economy: healthcare, manufacturing, trade, energy, communications, you name it. And for years, lobbyists fought to keep me off of this committee because they don't like what they don't control. And an interesting thing happened on the day that it was announced that I would be assigned to the committee. Our phones rang off the hook, and my office's inboxes were flooded by every corporate lobbyist under the sun. All of a sudden, they wanted to be best friends. But you know what, Folsom? Because of your support, because of gatherings like here today, because you allow me to not take a dime in corporate money, you free me to say no. You free me to fight for Medicare for all people. You free me to fight for a renewable energy economy. But not everyone is so lucky. I've seen firsthand how these groups bully and pressure members of Congress. They threaten to take their money away or to spend it against them if they don't do what they want. And what they want is for our lives to be as expensive as possible on the lowest possible wage. What they want is for as many people to be exploited in America as possible. And it trickles down to how life feels for working people today. So I want us to understand that this constant pressure that we feel in our lives, of the water rising up to our throats, the impossibility to afford anything easily, the fear of speaking up or being who we are in public, the bitter divisions driven more by online algorithms than the truth, the crumbling of our rights and protections, understand that this, right now, is what it feels like to be governed by billionaires. Not someday, but right now. And the first step is to open our eyes to that. Because of course, it is a system that depends on division to enable its inequality, that will favor a president who is the best at dividing us and the most skilled at corruption. And it will also reward the Republicans in Congress who support that agenda, no matter what crimes are committed, including crimes from the White House. Big money is how we got Donald Trump. His whole presidency began with launching tools for bribery, meme coins, and cryptocurrencies to fleece normal people and move money in the dark, extortion settlements from media companies and law firms who gladly pay the price. And he even removed duly elected officials, including Republican ones, from the chamber of the inauguration to make room for who he really wants in charge, the unelected billionaires who were standing behind him. They have one central economic mission: to make billionaires richer at the expense of all of us. So it does not surprise us that their first economic mission has been to smear and target Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, to fire our federal workers, and to
they need to
abandon
make
our
cuts
veterans
somewhere,
for
right?
hundreds of billions of dollars in cuts so that they can hand that money off to their donors.
Yeah.
And the things that they say are
$5 trillion
crazy.
tax cut over the next 10 years.
Medicaid is one of the most efficient and effective
Increasing
public
the debt
systems,
ceiling.
lowest in fraud that we have in the United States. Just yesterday, I saw on television, on Fox News, you had this woman, Jeanine Pirro.
Gross.
The crazy thing about Jeanine Pirro is that she's from Westchester County, where I went to public school, and it's like, wow, how things have evolved there. Anyways, so Jeanine Pirro goes on television. She says, as though this is fraud, she says that they found so many babies and 2-year-olds and 4-year-olds who were receiving Social Security. I've got a notice for you, Jeanine Pirro. Those babies get Social Security because their parents died.
Bingo.
That's humanity. That's America. That's the country that we fight for. Those are the promises we make to one
That's
another.
literally what happens. And like fucking, of course, Elon Musk doesn't know that. Apparently, he wants to try to make
it is the best of us.
like Social Security ran through Twitter.
I know that it at times can look impossible out here for the Republicans to be defeated. But that is not true. It is simply not true. From the waitress who is now speaking to you today, I can tell you impossible is nothing. Miracles start with mustard seeds, and that is what each and every one of you represent today. Small miracles of faith in ourselves, in each other, and in the refusal to give up. So, Folsom, we are here for the long haul, for the school boards and the community associations, for small business groups and town councils, for public art and gestures of inclusion. And we will build from there, because Kevin Kiley will not be a congressman for much longer if you've got anything to do with it.
I hope so.
And by the way, as they try to cut Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, we just need to peel off 3 Republican congressmen in the entire country. And I got a feeling that you might do it right here in Folsom. And if you do it, Folsom, then the people here today will have saved Medicaid for the entire United States of America. We stand with you, we are here with you, and we will support you. Beyond elections, our task is also to build community. Block associations, volunteer groups, advocacy organizations, PTAs, church and faith groups, because community is the most powerful building block we have to defeat authoritarianism and root out corruption. This is the path to guaranteeing health care to every American, to establishing a living minimum wage, to take on skyrocketing rents and mortgages, to tackle the climate crisis, and establish a country where the American dream is actually possible for all of us. So I will end where I began. We may all come from different places, but we share so many of the same experiences. So to all those who came here today unsure of whether or not this is where you belong, I want to say affirmatively that you do. No matter if you have all the right words to say, no matter your race, religion, gender identity, or status, if you even voted for Donald Trump in the past and are open to changing your mind, come on in.
3 strikes and you're out, though.
To fight for someone you don't know, you are welcome here. If you are willing to fight for working people, regardless of who they are, how they identify, or where they come from, you are welcome here. Because here, everyone is valued. But we have to stand together. We cannot be tempted to turn in our neighbors or be fooled into thinking that we're really that much different than the trans kid who wants to get accepted at school. We can't fall for the ruse that we're that different than the dreamer who wants to provide for their family and fulfill our country's promise. It is standing together without exception to reject division. That is the only way that we can win. So I hope that you see this movement is not about partisan labels or purity tests, but it is about class solidarity. The thousands of you who came out here today to stand together and say our lives deserve dignity and our work deserves respect. We are here to make a sacred promise to one another. And our goal is to commit to building the kind of country that we all deserve. And we will make that promise to take care of each other on our worst days and to share in the successes of our best. Thank you, Folsom. Thank you for having me. And with that, it is my honor to introduce someone who has spent his life bringing us together. Everyone, please welcome Senator Bernie Sanders.
All right, so let's react to her really quick. So,
Sure.
She's on fire. I mean, performance-wise, there's really nothing to complain about. She's bringing it and saying all the right things, touching on policy in a general way, like guaranteed health care, for example, not using the Medicare for all label. So I think they're purposely keeping it pretty general,
Right.
but which is smart.
Yeah.
I don't think they need to be anything more. It doesn't need to be anything more than just, we hear you, you're pissed off, we hear you,
Yeah. No, it's like I was saying in the last stream that we did. The goal of this tour should be to focus on those more vulnerable areas, and so far they have. Folsom is in a red district, and I think earlier in the morning that same day they were in Bakersfield, not exactly a Democrat haven. So yeah, bringing this message to these vulnerable areas could go a long way, and I'm glad that they're actually sticking to not just like safe blue areas that are dominated by the Democrats and whatnot. So
it takes a lot of courage to go into these areas, and they're getting good feedback. I mean, they're getting good results in terms of attendance. That's why I was curious to see the Montana speech.
Right.
I would be interested. Do you want to do a little comparison where we watch her Montana speech and we see if it's any different than the one we just saw?
Sure.
We don't have to if you don't want to, if you got a better idea.
I mean, I am curious about just like, I guess, attendance size. We could probably see that in the headlines, like how exactly Montana.
Well, they said 26,000 in Folsom, so I'm sure even just 10,000 in Montana would be impressive.
Right. Yeah. And like what part of Montana as well, because that's a pretty deep red state. Following Trump is a rapist with the unity message was weak. I mean, we should be unified in the fact that Trump is a rapist and he was found liable for sexual assault.
Brennan Langva wants to know, what do you think her 2020 primary chances are? I think they're pretty damn fucking good right now.
Like if she runs for Congress, well, it depends on what you mean, because if she runs for Senate, I believe like she does have a very, very good chance of being Schumer, and there's polls that indicate that she would take Schumer's seat if it comes down
Yeah,
to
but
it.
she could just go right for the presidency.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
I think that's
personally.
what
I
he's
don't think.
talking about. Just Brennan, what do you mean? Do you
Oh,
mean
like the
her
Democratic
chances for a
primary?
higher office?
Yeah,
Well, I think
right.
he's talking about the Democratic primary for president.
Yeah. She would definitely get far. There's no doubt about that. She is a Democratic rock star right now. Megan says, also, we are here to support gestures of inclusion. Standalone is garbage. She followed that one up better, though. And 10,000 in Montana is like half the state. That's true. Yeah. Not good if she focuses on class solidarity if the DNC has anything to do with it. I mean, yeah, because like the DNC broadly doesn't fucking focus on class solidarity at all, let alone class. At least rhetorically in a broader sense. And that, I mean, that kind of messaging could go a long way if the DNC and Democrats at large ran with it. But right now, it's not exactly the case. And
Brendan
that's what.
Langvis says, I don't know about Senate versus House, but I'm asking about winning the primary in either
Gotcha.
circumstance. Yeah, I think she's a shoo-in for Schumer's spot in New York
Yeah,
in the Senate whenever
so.
he's up. He's up in 2028. You're sure about that?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if she wants that, then she could go get that. But I think she's enough of a star to go right for the presidency. I mean, who cares? Like, I don't care how young she surrounds herself with good people. She'll be a good president. That's the thing is, like, if you want to be, being a candidate is all on the candidate, right? Yeah. Being a candidate is all on the candidate. Being president is on the cabinet.
Yeah.
It's on the team and the political climate. You know, how much power can you get from Congress? Because it's tough to get anything done when Congress doesn't have, you know, the majorities in your favor.
Yeah. Megan says she's going to get Bernied or worse, get waltzed. That's definitely a possibility. She's not their preferred candidate for sure. They'll cuck her the best they can if she goes for president. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm afraid of, because it's like you're going straight for the jugular when we do need more senators with her ideals, with her ideology, and I think that taking like Schumer, like, for the love of fucking God, needs to go yesterday, last year, a decade ago. He, like, fucking please. I'm so fucking tired of hearing him. He fucking stabbed the country in the back. He fucking got his entire caucus, his entire party to fucking get in line when it came to the
budget.
Yeah, when it came to the budget, and then turned around and was like, oh no, we're not going to vote for this piece that would lower the vote count for getting the budget reconciliation bill passed, or whatever the fuck it was. And lo and behold, now it's moving forward, and it's like, now you think voting against the budget as is going to matter? No, all they need is a simple majority, and you don't have the fucking Senate right now, Chuck. You fucking idiot. Like, who cares if the government would have shut down? I mean, a lot of
people would have blamed people would have blamed the Republicans. It would have been really great ammunition to use against them, and now they don't have it.
Of course. All right. Well, we can continue with Bernie now if you want.
I want to see AOC in Montana to compare and contrast her speeches to see if anything changed.
Yeah. From what I heard, the Folsom speech, it did sound a lot like the LA speech.
Our coworkers never. It's a thank you. Alexandria Garcia. Sarah Nelson is one of the most badass women in America. As a labor leader, as a champion, and she knows better than anyone the power of working people together. And so thank you, Sarah, and thank you all of you for making the effort for being here today. We are at capacity here. 7,500, 7,600 here in this arena right now. Another 1,500 people outside at least.
Yeah, so about 10,000. Good call. Almost 10,000.
Something very, very special is happening here today, Montana, and I want to thank you so much. Thank you. My name is Alexandria. Some of you may know me as AOC. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for welcoming me here to Missoula, flying in today. You just saw how beautiful this state is. It is just breathtaking. And
It's true.
it's a
Montana
state
is
worth fighting
beautiful.
for. You all are a people worth fighting for, and we are going to win. We are all here together because we share in the frustration and heartache that comes from watching those in power actively tear down or refuse to fight for everyday working Americans like us. And we are here together because an extreme concentration of power, greed, and corruption is taking over this country like never before. Oligarchy.
Yeah.
And we must acknowledge the terrifying moment that we are in right now. And that what we are hearing and seeing with our own eyes is, in fact, happening.
All right. Yeah, she's going to do the same thing.
As our
Of course.
neighbors, students, and
Which
friends
checks
are being
out. I mean,
fired,
she'll give it a little bit of fluff here and there. She'll do like a little improv in
People we love
between
are being
her
targeted and harassed for being
pre-planned
LGBTQ.
speech, but
Our
you know,
coworkers
it's
What
has
was
to
the
be.
one?
citizens
Legal
and
Eagle. What
women
was the one you
are
wanted?
being
Legal Eagle.
disappeared
What?
off the street
Oh,
by men
so
in vans
the
with no
video
uniform.
from him,
Immigrant?
called
Are being fired
Come on,
for
man.
teaching American
it
history accurately.
is Trump
And
orders to return
activists
wrongly
are
deported
being
man.
detained
Yeah, I
with
got
no
it.
charge or evidence for using their First Amendment rights, especially if they are
Yeah,
using those First
buckle up
Amendment
for
rights
this one.
to
This
speak up
is
for Palestinians and to end the war in Gaza.
Oh, she talks about the war on Gaza. Okay. Okay, we'll give AOC another couple minutes here.
yeah, she
Lot of
mentioned it in the Folsom speech too.
Wow, people are really anti
No kidding, of course.
The Trump
genocide
administration
in
admits
Montana.
that it has jailed a young husband and father from New York, Mahmoud Khalil, without any evidence or charge of a crime.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
All right. And then I guess like after this Legal Eagle video, we'll end it off with Bernie's speech.
Kilmar Garcia has never been charged with any crime. He's never been tried or convicted in a criminal
Let's
court.
do it 1.25, and let's turn it up just a little bit too.
Threatened to take away his son and send him to rot in El Salvador's notorious torture prison. The administration has admitted that his removal and rendition was an administrative error. The Supreme Court ordered Trump to facilitate his release, but President Trump and El Salvador have announced that they will not release Mr. Abrego Garcia.
How can I return him to their letters if I smuggled him?
This decision arguably defies a Supreme Court order, openly flouts district court orders, and tramples on the fundamental right to due process. And we've talked a lot about due process lately because there's been a lot to talk about on the subject, but also because due process is an essential component of a fair and functioning country. Due process rights protect us all against arbitrary abusive actions by the government. They ensure everyone has the right to counsel, the right to a fair hearing, and the right to hear evidence against them, and the right to rebut that evidence. These substantive rights and processes help to ensure that innocent people aren't punished based on weak or non-existent evidence, that they aren't sent to prison because they don't have legal knowledge to defend themselves without the help of an attorney, and that they understand what they are being accused of and have an opportunity to present evidence and defenses. But the ramifications
this
should disturb every American.
Slow down just a little bit. It's just a little too fast.
Mhm.
This is like the biggest sticking point right now is the fact that like a lot of these cases, a lot of these people that are sent down there, especially in the case of the man who's at the top of this video, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, not having the due process fully fleshed out, and basically like we'll get into it. It's a lot to process.
Because if the administration gets its way, then anyone, including the people watching this video, yes, you, the person watching this video right now, could be renditioned to a foreign country as long as the government renditions you fast enough before the courts can kick in. Now, Mr. Abrego Garcia grew up in Los Nogales, El Salvador.
Scary.
His family ran a pupuseria out of their home. And according to findings by an immigration court judge, David Jones, for years, the Barrio 18 gang extorted and threatened the family. The gang regularly threatened to kill him and his brother and rape his sisters if his parents did not pay regular bribes. One day when Mr. Abrego Garcia was around 12 years old, Barrio 18 gang members.
Barrio 18. Now they keep on saying they keep on trying to claim it was MS-13 or that other common notorious gang from Central America.
MS-13.
Well, not, aside from MS-13, there's another one with a Spanish name. They keep on trying to claim that he was a gang member or affiliated with either MS-13 or this other gang whose name escaped me, and it's just not true. It's just a lie.
Brennan Langva says the Abrego case is one of the most profound cases of chuds living in an alternative reality in recent memory.
No,
yeah,
kidding.
Man. I mean, they don't care about the rules. They don't care about due process. They don't even know what the hell due process is. Yeah. This guy, Legal Eagle, just explained the basics of why due process is so important. Especially and all for the Trump trash don't even know those things. The Trump trash don't pay attention to the basics.
Yeah. MAGA trash tries to tell you they're like, oh, I mean, well, he's not a citizen. Non-citizens don't get due process. Illegal immigrants don't get due progress. If you're not documented here, if you're not a citizen here, you don't get due process. It's just like, motherfucker, in the Constitution, it explicitly lays out that you do get due process here, no matter who you are or where you come from, even if
Right.
you're like not a citizen here. Like if you're just visiting on a visa or whatever, like you're still entitled to due process, because guess what? Guess fucking what? The government can say, well, I mean, there's no like say you don't have like your ID, or the government like even just unilaterally designates you as a non-citizen, or says that you're a terrorist, and now you have to prove that you're not. What if you can't? That's what due process is for. If like they say that terrorists or criminals don't get due process if they're here, or if they're a foreigner, they can easily do the exact same thing to you.
Right.
And it's like, how do you prove at that point? Because due process is how you prove that you are here, that you are a legal U.S. citizen. If that due process is there, guess what? You as a legal U.S. citizen is going to the fucking death camp in El Salvador, dude. I swear to fucking God. Yeah, yeah.
Do you remember a Spielberg movie named Amistad?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
This is how far back due process goes for all of those who care. There was a ship full of slaves that ended up on the coast of Massachusetts, and Massachusetts was like, what do we do with them? Where'd they come from? Were they already slaves? And the whole case comes down to whether or not they were born in Africa or if they were born in the US. And so they end up getting set free. But yeah, they were entitled to due process, even though
Right.
people were arguing that they were fucking slaves.
No, of
So,
course.
like, everyone's entitled to due process, you idiots.
Yeah,
Members
yeah,
arrived at the home
and
and
the thing
told his
about
mother.
that too is like, just like a little aside, it's like this whole thing about heritage as a concept, and like where you come from and everything. It's just like there's pride in that. But the thing about descendants of slaves and shit, it wasn't in the slave master's interest to keep track of that. Like, so
Right.
there's no heritage to look back on. There's no sense of pride in where you come from, and like because we literally stripped that away from descendants of slaves. No U.S. citizens
Told his
will go
mother
to
that
El
they
Salvador. It's not going to happen. Well, it literally just did, Megan.
were going to take Kilmar and force him to join the gang because his
You're
family
gonna
had
learn
not paid
some.
the bribe money. Kilmar's father managed to save his son by giving the gang members all the money that they demanded. But the gang continued to stalk Kilmar whenever he left his home. His
They're
father, a former police
extorting
officer,
his
paid him off,
family.
but the threats
Him and his
persisted.
family.
The police could not help. The gang infiltrated the police. After repeated moves and increasing
Yep.
danger, Kilmar's family sent him to live with his U.S. citizen brother in Maryland. In Maryland, Kilmar apparently lived quietly, working construction and raising a family with his partner Jennifer, a U.S. citizen. In 2019, while seeking day labor at a Home Depot, he was arrested with 3 other men despite no charges or known gang ties. The only evidence offered by ICE was a bull's hat and a claim by a confidential informant linking him to a New York-based gang he had no ties to. Local police had no record of any charges against him. Mr. Abrego Garcia applied for release on bond, and ICE opposed his release, claiming that he was a dangerous gang member based only on the Chicago Bulls hat and hoodie, as well as the confusing confidential informant testimony. And on the basis of ICE's claims, out of an abundance of caution, the immigration court denied Mr. Abrego Garcia's request for release on bond. So he continued to remain in the detention center. From there, he filed an application for asylum with an application for withholding of removal. Now, as stated by the UN, asylum is a form of protection which allows an individual to remain in the United States instead of being deported to a country where he or she fears persecution or harm. And seeking asylum is legal immigration. Under US law, people who flee their countries because they fear persecution can apply for asylum. They're called asylees. And relevant to Mr. Abrego Garcia's claim of asylum, at the conclusion of the 2-day hearing, the immigration judge found that Mr. Abrego Garcia had, quote, provided credible responses to the questions asked. His testimony was internally consistent, externally consistent with his asylum application and other documents, and appeared free of embellishment. Judge Jones found that Mr. Abrego Garcia also provided, quote, substantial documentation buttressing his claims. However, the judge denied his asylum petition on a technicality. He had missed the 1-year deadline. Instead, he was granted a withholding of removal under INA Section 241B, which is a protection against deportation to El Salvador due to a clear risk of persecution.
No, Megan, no.
Now, withholding of removal
that's not what it said. He wasn't denied asylum. He missed the window. So like he was granted a temporary hold. So like they couldn't kick him out of the country. And this was 6 years ago.
Protection than asylum. Unlike asylum, it doesn't grant legal status or a path to citizenship. It only bars deportation to a specific country. It's granted if the person proves a clear probability of persecution based on race, religion, nationality, social group, or...
Yeah, so because of this, the Trump administration, the DOJ, everybody who was involved with kicking him out of the country, they violated the fucking law. Even the Supreme Court said in a 9-0 decision, you need to bring this guy back. You unlawfully sent him to El Salvador.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Or political opinion, which is actually a higher standard than asylum. Judge Jones found that Mr. Abrego Garcia had met the standard. He had credibly shown that his life had been threatened by Barrio 18 on multiple occasions. And at the conclusion of the hearing, Mr. Abrego Garcia was released to return to his family in Maryland. Now, neither ICE nor local law enforcement ever made further claims about his membership in any gang. And since then, Kilmar has lived peacefully, supporting his family and caring for his disabled son. He had complied with immigration check-ins and had no legal issues until March 12th of this year, when he was pulled over while driving with his son. Now, on March 12th, 2025, after finishing a shift as a sheet metal worker apprentice in Baltimore, Mr. Abrego Garcia picked up his son from his grandmother's home. That's when ICE officers pulled him over. They told him his status had changed and threatened to call Child Protective Services unless his partner, Jennifer Vasquez-Sura, arrived within 10 minutes to retrieve their son. Mr. Abrego Garcia was shuffled around to several locations over the next few days. His wife, Jennifer, spent days trying to locate him, discovering that he'd been transferred between multiple facilities across the country. She repeatedly informed the government that Kilmar had been granted a withholding of removal, but her objections were ignored. So Ms. Vasquez-Sura had no idea where her husband was until her brother-in-law sent a news report about the people who had been sent to El Salvador's torture prison by President Trump. That article contained a picture of a man who had a tattoo and scars that matched Mr. Abrego Garcia's. More news media photos confirmed that he was indeed being held in El Salvador's terrorism
Rewind that real
confinement.
quick. So this is like pretty jarring, pretty damning actually. So this right here.
Yeah.
This is a picture of him. Tattoos that matched Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and that's how they fucking found out that he was sent to El Salvador. He is in the torture camp as we speak. And the senator from Maryland, one of the senators from Maryland, went down there and was denied access to the facility, denied entry to check on his condition. Whereas fucking the Republican that went down there, because there have been other ones that gone down there, was welcomed right in and took pictures with a cell of like 70 inmates all crammed together, just like posing in front of them. Fucking evil shit,
Yes.
Like soulless fucking garbage.
Yep.
People who had been
No, I was gonna say
That's him.
MAGA sees this picture and they don't care.
Yeah,
They're like,
give
whatever.
half a flying shit. Yeah,
They don't give a shit, guys. This is the thing about like, this is what I keep waiting for is, when is the conflict going to get to citizen versus citizen?
Yeah.
Because there are at least 1/3 of American voters who think that this picture right here is okay.
Yeah.
They think that this is an acceptable way of handling, quote unquote, illegal immigrants.
Yeah, they understand
undocumented immigrants.
the implications of this, because like fucking ICE, they have quotas, so like they'll just fucking they'll detain anybody, and fucking if the courts aren't able to catch up with your case, if they fucking pin a bunch of shit against you, it's a very, very slippery slope. Like they understand that this could easily fucking happen to them. We'll get more into it as the video goes along, but the U.S. government even admitted it was a fucking administrative error, and yet they're not able to fucking bring this guy back. But yeah, like Evil Miles and Folsom, there were protesters across the street for the entrance of the venue that Bernie and AOC were speaking at, and yeah, it was just a bunch of Trump trash, loudly playing music, big trucks, flags, and whatnot. And there was one fucking sign that was being held up by a pretty young guy, and it just stuck with me. He said, "Trump's third term is on its way. Get ready." It's just like,
yeah,
you fucking soulless, shameless bastards.
Yeah, they don't care. I mean, they're miserable people, and they want everyone else to be miserable. It's not complicated. Just,
of course,
don't ever let people convince you that Trump trash are complicated, because they're not.
Been sent to El Salvador's torture prison by President Trump. That article contained a picture of a man who had a tattoo and scars that matched Mr. Abrego Garcia's. More news media photos confirmed that he was indeed being held in El Salvador's terrorism confinement center, despite the fact that he had a valid withholding of removal, and despite the fact that he was never given a hearing or was ever formally charged with any wrongdoing. So now, with that knowledge, Ms. Vasquez-Sura filed a suit on behalf of her husband, herself, and their 5-year-old son in the United States District Court for the District of Maryland. Now, in their complaint, the plaintiffs allege that by sending Mr. Abrego Garcia to the Terrorism Confinement Center, or CCOT, without any kind of hearing, the Trump administration had violated the INA provisions governing withholding of removal orders, the Administrative Procedure Act, Act's prohibition against arbitrary and capricious government actions, and the Fifth Amendment's guarantee of due process. Mr. Abrego Garcia also filed a habeas corpus petition arguing that the Salvadoran government was detaining him at the express direction of the Trump administration. And if you've been following along with all the Supreme Court antics involving the JGG plaintiffs previously in Judge Boasberg's courtroom, then you know that a habeas petition was an incredibly important thing for them to file. We'll talk more about that in a second. And the Trump administration is paying El Salvador $6 million to house 300 men for a year. Trump and Salvadoran leader Nayib Bukele, the self-proclaimed coolest dictator in the world, have both publicly bragged about this arrangement. In a March 16 post on Twitter, Bukele acknowledged the self-proclaimed coolest dictator in the world have both publicly bragged about this arrangement. In a March 16 post on Twitter, Bukele acknowledged their financial agreement, stating, quote, "Today, the first 238 members of the Venezuelan criminal organization, Tren de Aragua, arrived in our country. They were immediately transferred to CICOT, the terrorism confinement center, for a period of 1 year, renewable. The United States will pay a very low fee for them, but a high one for us." Bukele also bragged about how the prisoners in CICOT are being used as slave labor, stating, quote, "Over time, these actions combined with the production already being generated by more than 40,000 inmates engaged in various workshops and labor under the Zero Idleness program will help make our prison system self-sustainable." The plaintiffs also allege that the Trump administration knows that the men in CICOT are being subjected to torture. Their complaint includes a harrowing list of details about the conditions in CICOT based on credible news reports and independent investigations, including 153 inmate deaths in a 1 year period, many of which can be attributed to torture, beatings, strangulation, and lack of medical attention. Now, autopsies have revealed patterns of cuts, hematomas, sharp object wounds, and signs of strangulation. Survivors of the prison report being subjected to electrocution and untreated infections. The prison has no windows, fans, or air conditioning despite hot, humid, tropical conditions. And prisoners are housed in overcrowded cells and are denied access to reading materials, familial visits, exercise, and outdoor time. Given the appalling conditions that he's being held in, Mr. Abrego Garcia and his family...
Doesn't that picture look very, very familiar? Like something that happened like, roughly 80-something years ago. It's like,
Sure does.
Like the parallels are fucking pretty damn uncanny.
It's interesting that the prison industrial complex doesn't just exist in America; it also exists in El Salvador.
Yeah, you're Megan. Tren de Aragua is Venezuela, not El Salvador. El Salvador is MS-13 and 18th Street. So you have to ask yourself, why if Tren de Aragua is here, which I haven't seen any fucking evidence of that actually being the case, why are they being sent to El Salvador and not back to Venezuela? Venezuela shouldn't have refused deportations and should walk back on that. Citizens are suffering, being given little due process for getting ties claims. Yeah, but do you think the Trump administration gives half a shit? Do you think the El Salvadoran president gives half a fucking shit?
No,
about
they're just bodies. They're just bodies that they're moving around.
Yeah, people are making money off this shit. The more people you stack into these prisons, you got Trump on the hot mic saying, homegrowns are next. Homegrown U.S. criminals are next. You're gonna need to build five more fucking facilities, because we want to be able to send them this is fucking happening. This is happening.
Despite hot, humid, tropical conditions, and prisoners are housed in overcrowded cells and are denied access to reading materials, familial visits, exercise, and outdoor time. Given the appalling conditions that he's being held in, Mr. Abrego Garcia and his family implored the court to grant a restraining order. Plaintiffs noted that if the Trump administration had wanted to remove Kilmar legally, it had several lawful options. It could have appealed the original grant of withholding of removal, sought to reopen the proceedings under the INA, or even deported him to any country other than El Salvador. The only country his withholding protected him from was El Salvador. Instead, the administration pursued an entirely different path. And maybe Mr. Garcia is a member of MS-13. Maybe he's Space Hitler. But we don't know because the administration never tried to prove it. Unlike the JGG plaintiffs, it isn't relying on the Alien Enemies Act in Kilmar's case. That executive order applies only to Venezuelan nationals. Rather, the sole justification the administration has offered is a vague, unsubstantiated claim that Mr. Abrego Garcia was affiliated with MS-13. The State Department had previously designated MS-13 as a major transnational criminal organization designated terrorist group in February of 2025. The Trump administration has presented zero evidence that Mr. Abrego Garcia is a member of MS-13 or any criminal organization. They never produced Mr. Abrego Garcia has never been found guilty of any crime or even charged with any crime. But in response to the plaintiff's motion for TRO, the Trump administration actually admitted that, quote, although ICE was aware of his protection from removal to El Salvador, Abrego Garcia was removed to El Salvador because of an administrative error. The government's declaration by Robert Sina, acting field office director for enforcement affirmed this, stating, quote,
okay, so like in that case, shouldn't the Department of Government Efficiency step in?
Yeah.
Like, why? Like, we got administrative errors going on in fucking ICE and Customs and Border Enforcement. It's like, sounds like they need to be fucking audited by DOJ, huh? This whole ordeal is beyond terrifying.
It is terrifying. Yes.
Fucking, it's been plaguing my mind for fucking days now.
Through administrative error, Abrego Garcia was removed from the United States to El Salvador. This was an oversight. Now, despite this admission, the administration went on to claim that the Maryland court cannot offer Mr. Abrego Garcia any relief. The administration argued that Mr. Abrego Garcia's case must be brought as a habeas corpus claim, which can only be heard by a court with jurisdiction over the detainee's custodian. And they argued that since he was already deported to El Salvador when the suit was filed, no U.S. court has jurisdiction. The Trump administration also asserted that the plaintiffs lack standing because the court can't compel El Salvador to act. Now, Maryland Federal District Judge Paula
Yeah, we
Zenas
paid them
was
fucking
understandably
millions of
skeptical of all
dollars
the
to keep
administration's claims.
fucking
She rejected the
arguments there.
administration's evidence-less claims that Mr. Abrego Garcia is an MS-13 gang member, stating, quote, when someone is accused of membership in such a violent and predatory organization, it comes in the form of an indictment, complaint, or criminal proceeding that has a robust process. And at the hearing, she said, quote, all this points to a functional control, and that if the United States as a contracted party can have the functional control of the placement, the wrongful placement, they certainly have the functional control of the return. So on April 4th, the judge granted a preliminary injunction ordering the Trump administration to, quote, facilitate and effectuate the return of plaintiff Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia to the United States by no later than 11:59 p.m. on Monday, April 7, 2025. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller responded to the news about Judge Zenas' ruling on Twitter, saying, quote, Marxist judge now thinks she's president of El Salvador. Bukele posted on Twitter with his usual level of gravitas and maturity, and White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stated that, quote, we suggest
the tweet that was just made by Stephen Miller on the video, fucking claiming that the judge
It's a Marxist judge.
wow, like, because having due process fully play out, like, that's Marxism now. It's like, God, you fucking disgusting piece
They just
of
have the
garbage.
buzzwords, man. They just have the buzzwords that they go to, the little arsenal of rhetorical parlor tricks that they use, and Marxism is one of them. Socialism, it's the same shit.
We'll get more, like, the video eventually mentioned it, but it's like they're all just fucking lying about this shit. Like, Stephen Miller is probably fucking masturbating to this shit every fucking night. He gets off on it. He doesn't give half a flying shit. He's an evil fuck. And like he lied about the Supreme Court's decision. He lied about fucking this guy being part of MS-13. He lied about this guy having a criminal record. He lied about this guy I'm gonna have an aneurysm. Let's keep this going.
Suggest the judge contact President Bukele because we are unaware of the judge having jurisdiction or authority over the country of El Salvador. And so the administration immediately and predictably appealed Judge Zenas' order, begging the Court of Appeals of the Fourth Circuit to please allow them to send people to the gulag immediately with no questions asked. And predictably, all three judges in the Court of Appeals were unconvinced by the administration's arguments. Judge Thacker, an Obama appointee, wrote the opinion of the court saying that, quote, the United States government has no legal authority to snatch a person who is lawfully present in the United States off the street and remove him from the country without due process. The government's contention otherwise, and its argument that the federal courts are powerless to intervene, are unconscionable. She also noted the government, quote, screwed up and must, quote, clean up the mess it has made. And so the Trump administration asked the Supreme Court to vacate the district court's ruling. And on April 7th, the Supreme Court granted a temporary stay, pausing Mr. Abrego Garcia's
Technically,
return
we're criminals too, Megan.
His order should be vacated. The court allowed the district court's temporary restraining order to expire, which is how the Trump administration got out of the whole JGG debacle where Judge Boasberg had ordered them to turn the planes around, which is not a great pattern. And finally, on April 10th, the Supreme Court unanimously ruled against the Trump administration's motion to vacate Judge Zenas' order. And this decision by the Supreme Court is a complete mixed bag. But all 9 justices, including 6 Republican appointees, 3 of whom were appointed by Trump, found that the lower court's order to facilitate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia should stand. The justices found, though, that the portion of the order that commanded the Trump administration to actually effectuate Mr. Abrego Garcia's return may have exceeded Judge Zenas' authority and would need to be clarified by Judge Zenas with, quote,
hey, Mark, you're a Democrat now. You're gonna have to. He's saying send all Democrat to El Salvador. Well, Mark, what if you're a Democrat? What if the U.S. government deems you a terrorist?
Right.
But you're not a terrorist, right? But what if the government says you're a terrorist? Should you still get due process? If we're sending terrorists to El Salvador, and the government says you're a terrorist, who are you to argue with them, right? Trump knows what he's doing. Trump's administration knows what he's doing, right? There's no incompetence here. How are you going to prove it? If there's no due process in place, they'll ship you out of the country before the courts even catch up with you being deported. Yeah. You need to understand the gravity of the situation here, dude. Go ahead.
Due regard for the deference owed to the executive branch in the conduct of foreign affairs. Now, the Supreme Court indicated that Judge Zenas' order that the government effectuate Mr. Abrego Garcia's return might exceed judicial authority. The court didn't spell out a specific reason for that, but a typical reading of the term effectuate would indicate that it would require the government to ensure a particular outcome, as opposed to requiring the government to simply take steps to facilitate an outcome. And there are reasonable separation of powers issues here. Ordering the administration to guarantee Mr. Abrego Garcia's return could mean effectively ordering some kind of military action if El Salvador outright refuses to return him. And everyone agrees that a judge can't do that. Facilitate is a much looser term, which has led to a series of disputes.
They'll still be sent to get fucking tortured.
Case since the Supreme Court's holding. The Trump administration is reading the order to facilitate Mr. Abrego Garcia's release from the Salvadoran custody in the most minimal fashion possible, claiming that when Judge Dennis and the Supreme Court ordered this, all they really meant was removing any domestic obstacles that would otherwise impede the alien's ability to return. And the Supreme Court also instructed the government to, quote, be prepared to share what it can concerning the steps it has taken and the prospect of further steps. But Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson took the Trump administration to task for its illegal action, stating that, quote, to this day, the government has cited no basis in law for Abrego Garcia's warrantless arrest, his removal to El Salvador, or his confinement in a Salvadoran prison, nor could it. And the three justices raised alarms about the Trump administration's due process violations, warning that, quote, the government's argument, moreover, implies that it could deport and incarcerate any person, including U.S. citizens, without legal consequence so long as it does so before a court can intervene. The concurring justices admonished the administration to comply with due process of law and provide Mr. Abrego Garcia with all the process he should have been entitled to, including notice and a hearing. But the Supreme Court's ruling also opened the door for Trump to argue that he has no power to actually effectuate Mr. Abrego Garcia's release. Now, unless you're the U.S. government, if you're kidnapping immigrants, you're going to want a good lawyer. But if you want a great lawyer, let my law firm, the Eagle Team, help. If you've got an upper Social Security, so just click on remand. Judge Dennis quickly amended her order to remove the word effectuate. She commanded the Trump administration to provide the basic details about Mr. Abrego Garcia's whereabouts and status, as well as the steps that the government is taking to recover him, in keeping with the Supreme Court's order that the government, quote, should be prepared to share what it can concerning the steps it has taken and the prospect of further steps. And she gave the administration until 9:30 a.m. the following morning to provide her the relevant details. After they failed to meet this deadline, Judge Dennis granted the Trump administration extension until 11:30 a.m. that day, a deadline that they once again failed to meet. But instead of providing the required answers, the Trump administration filed a motion whining about the impossible deadline and claiming that they simply could not share any of the requested information with the court at this time. But Judge Dennis wasn't having it and ordered the Trump administration to respond daily with the following information, quote, the current physical location and custodial status of Abrego Garcia, what steps, if any, defendants have taken to facilitate his immediate return to the United States, what additional steps the defendants will take and when to facilitate his return. She scheduled a follow-up hearing for Tuesday, April 15th. Now, the government's first status update was
this whole thing comes down to how powerful are the courts. Like, we're going to find out how powerful the courts are.
Everything's.
This is a big test. This is a litmus test for how powerful our courts are compared to the executive branch, when the executive branch has both houses of Congress.
As it stands right now, the Trump administration is openly defying the Supreme Court's unanimous decision. Like literally, like openly defying it. Like it's the constitutional crisis is fucking here. Megan, what do you mean? The ad in the middle of this video makes so much more sense now. Yeah, he's a fucking lawyer. He's shilling his own fucking law firm. That's he's not allowed to do that.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. He seems like he's a pretty impressive guy.
He's great. He's fantastic.
I'd hire him.
No, for real. Like he's very, very knowledgeable, and like there's a reason why he has like 3 million subs, something like that. He's fucking great. Yeah, it's like show your shit, dude. I would use you.
Contained within it was that Mr. Abrego Garcia was alive and imprisoned at CECOT. One wonky thing is that when you file a status report like this, it must be backed up by a declaration, which is a written statement that's made under oath. This particular statement is about as wishy-washy as you can get. It was filed by a member of the Department of State, and it says, quote, it is my understanding based on official reporting from our embassy in San Salvador that Abrego Garcia is currently being held in the Terrorism Confinement Center in El Salvador. He's alive and secure in that facility. He is detained pursuant to the Sovereign Domestic Authority of El Salvador. Now, to me, as a litigator, given the several layers of intermediation before that person actually signed their name to something under oath, that sounds like someone who doesn't want to be held in contempt for actually making factual statements that may or may not be true. But notwithstanding, the next status update was even less substantive. The government representative simply stated, quote, it is my understanding that the defendants have no updates for the court beyond what was provided yesterday. Again, this means the administration is simply deciding not to answer the court's questions, or that is simply not taking steps to facilitate Garcia's return.
Stop being surprised.
Non-compliance. Plaintiffs filed a motion in the court requesting additional.
And after this video was put out, one of the judges involved with this is now holding the Trump administration in contempt of court.
Relief, including expedited discovery against the Trump administration and a potential contempt finding against the administration. The Trump administration
there it is. It's happening now.
To facilitate Mr. Abrego Garcia's return, all that really meant was that they should, quote, take all available steps to remove any domestic obstacles that would otherwise impede the alien's ability to return here. But as luck would have it, because we live in the worst timeline and everything is kayfabe, on April 14th, Trump and Bukele actually had a televised meeting at the White House where they mocked the court system. On the same day, Stephen Miller claimed that Abrego Garcia was not sent to El Salvador by mistake.
He was not mistakenly sent to El Salvador.
So do you still
He's an
believe
illegal alien from El Salvador?
But as we've talked about, it's important to note that the administration has admitted their mistake to the court at least 3 times. First by Robert Sina, acting field office director for enforcement and removal operations at ICE, and twice in briefs filed by the Solicitor General, D. John Sauer. Attorney General Pam Bondi has also falsely claimed the 2 courts ruled that Mr. Abrego Garcia was a member of MS-13.
He was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, 2 courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country.
And Bukele even labeled him a terrorist. But no court has ever concluded that Mr. Abrego Garcia is a terrorist or a member of MS-13. And as we talked about, a court issued the withholding of removal the last time Abrego Garcia had been in court because he had, in fact, been a victim of gangs in El Salvador. But according to the Attorney General, what the Supreme Court meant when they said that the government has to facilitate Mr. Abrego Garcia's return is just that if President Bukele decides to return him, the United States has to, quote, provide a plane.
This is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
Now, in the same meeting, President Bukele confirmed that he has no intention of returning Mr. Abrego Garcia to the United States or releasing him within El Salvador.
How can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it.
And to add injury to the insult to the injury, Trump says he really does want to send American citizens to the terrorism prison in El Salvador.
He said, homegrown's the next. The homegrown's built. You got to build about 5 more places. Yeah, that's fair. All right.
So we are not in a good spot. In this case, the government has told 3 courts that Kilmar Abrego Garcia was wrongfully removed, and a unanimous Supreme Court said that the government must facilitate his release. And yet, Trump is now openly flouting the court's order in order to keep an innocent man in prison. The ramifications here could not be more dire. Trump asserted that he has a right to do this to American citizens, telling Bukele that he should build 5 more prison camps that Trump will fill with undesirables, which is plainly at odds with the claim that they have no power to get Mr. Abrego Garcia back, which was foreshadowed in Justice Sotomayor's dissenting opinion in JGG versus Trump, where she said, quote, what if the government later determines that it sent one of the detainees to CCOT in error, or a court eventually decides that the president lacked authority under the Alien Enemies Act to declare that Trinidad is perpetrating or attempting an invasion against the territory of the United States? The government takes the position that even when it makes a mistake, it cannot retrieve individuals from the Salvadoran prisons to which it has sent them. The implication of the government's position is that not only non-citizens, but also United States citizens could be taken off the streets, forced onto planes, and confined to foreign prisons with no opportunity for redress if judicial review is denied unlawfully before removal.
That is the single biggest point of this entire video right here. What Sotomayor laid out there is like the single biggest thing. Like the implication here is the government's position is not only that non-citizens, but also United States citizens can be taken off the streets, forced onto planes, and confined to foreign prisons with no opportunity for redress if judicial review is denied unlawfully before removal. So, like, if there's oops, you just got administrative errored, you're gonna be worked to death in this fucking foreign torture camp. God.
No opportunity for redress if judicial review is denied unlawfully before removal. At base, the Supreme Court unanimously affirmed the district court's order, quote, properly requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. And back in the district court, the government's final status report included no new information about Mr. Abrego Garcia's status.
This guy wasn't here illegally.
A declaration by DHS acting general counsel Joseph Mazzara, who said that the U.S. was prepared to facilitate his entry into the U.S. by not allowing him to re-enter the United States. If Mr. Abrego Garcia presents to a port of entry, the United States will, quote, remove him to a third country or terminate his withholding of removal because of his membership in MS-13. Again, no mention of the regular immigration
never provided
process.
Evidence.
The Supreme Court has yet to say what facilitate means in this context, but the government is stating for the record that it believes it can send Mr. Abrego Garcia somewhere without any due process, and that's within the meaning of the word facilitate. Now, you might be wondering whether the government can get away with that without being held in contempt of court, and so am I. And in another contentious hearing before Judge Zenas on April 15th, the administration tried to argue that it had taken steps to fulfill the court's order to facilitate Mr. Abrego Garcia's return. The only evidence that the administration could offer, though, was the White House meeting with President.
Because citizens won't be sent to foreign countries, they can't find any excuses. The Trump administration can literally do whatever the fuck it wants.
Yeah,
they're testing the limits of the legal system right now. Trump wants to send homegrown criminals, like criminals here in the U.S., to fucking El Salvador. They don't want to keep them here because everybody has money invested in the El Salvador mega prison. And what's stopping them? Honestly, like, can the courts work fast enough? Like, it's literally part of it's part of the playbook. Ignore the courts for as long as you can.
Yep. Yeah, no, they're just this is Trump's MO for a really long time. You just don't respect the rules and get away with as much as you can.
Yeah.
With President Bukele the day before, which Judge Zenas found wholly insufficient. The government apparently showed up with a transcript of the meeting and asked for it to be considered evidence that the government was up against a foe that was impossible to defeat, Trump's pal Bukele. But Judge Dennis was not amused. She said she would not accept an out-of-court transcript of a YouTube video as evidence, and instead she would build a record using the rules of evidence, you know, the way we've done this for hundreds of years. And Mr. Abrego Garcia's counsel argued that the government has done nothing to facilitate his release, and asked for the deposition testimony of someone with authority to explain what actions the government has taken to comply with the Supreme Court's order. And in response to the administration's recalcitrance, Judge Dennis left open the possibility of a contempt finding and granted the plaintiff's request for expedited discovery. She indicated that she would be reviewing the government's discovery response to evaluate whether or not the administration is in compliance with her order. She told the government's lawyers to cancel your vacations because she intended to do this on a very tight 2-week timeline. Now, that may not sound like a tight timeline to non-lawyers, but it is extremely fast for a case of this magnitude. The government's lawyer, Drew Ensign, stopped short of saying that the government would comply with the court's discovery orders. He indicated that he would probably object on the grounds that attorney-client privilege applied, and therefore someone like Mr. Mazzara could not be expected to testify. And Ensign repeatedly told the court that there was no factual issue here, and according to Anna Bauer, who was in the courtroom, Judge Dennis wasn't having it. She said, quote, "To what SCOTUS said was squarely in my power, and in my view, you have not fulfilled the mandate I've issued. Discovery will bear that out because the affidavits are insufficient." Then you may see the government try to appeal the court's discovery order. Ensign argued that Judge Dennis first needed to clarify her TRO, and the judge said no additional order was necessary. And as Bauer reported, paraphrasing, quote, "Not that difficult, the Supreme Court has spoken. Let's talk about what the Supreme Court has unequivocally deemed to be lawful. You made your arguments there, and this is now about the scope of the remedy." And Judge Dennis's order following the hearing addressed the dispute over the meaning of the word facilitate. And she points out, quote, "Merriam-Webster defines the term as to make it easier or less difficult, to free from difficulty or impediment, whereas the Oxford English Dictionary defines facilitate as, quote, to assist a person, to enable or allow a person to do something, achieve a particular result." And the judge wrote that the defendants know what the word means and they failed to live up to any of these definitions. Quote, "The defendants therefore remain obligated at a minimum to take
even
steps
if it
available
wasn't,
to them."
even if it wasn't to actually like directly bring him back yourselves, they didn't even they because early in the video they said we need updates about this man. We need to know every step that's been taken in order to bring this guy back, and they didn't. They fucking gave them nothing. They responded with nothing. They didn't fucking even attempt to try to fucking bring this guy back because they don't fucking give a shit. It's like they're looking into the legality of it to see if they can to send fucking like U.S. citizens to El Salvador and shit. What's fucking stopping them? Once you're in there, you're never getting out. And that's the whole issue right here. It's like this administration doesn't give half a flying fuck about the laws. For one, they never did. Trump doesn't Trump's literally a fucking criminal. His cabinet's full of fucking criminals. This guy's literally a felon. God damn it, dude. People all right.
Aiding, assisting, or making easier Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and resuming his status quo ante. But the record reflects that the defendants have done nothing at all. Instead, the defendants obliquely suggest that facilitate is limited to taking all available steps to remove any domestic obstacles that would otherwise impede the alien's ability to return here. The fallacy in defendant's argument is twofold. First, in the immigration context, as it would facilitate the return of those wrongly deported, can and has included more extensive government efforts endorsed in prior precedent in DHS publications. Thus, the court cannot credit that facilitating the ordered relief is as limited as defendants suggest. Second, and more fundamentally, the defendants appear to have done nothing to aid in Abrego Garcia's release from custody and return to the United States to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been but for defendants' wrongful expulsion of him. Thus, defendants' attempt to skirt this issue by redefining facilitate runs contrary to law and logic. And in a footnote, the judge references the other part of the Supreme Court's order, which says the district court must still give due regard for the deference owed to the executive branch. But in this instance, Judge Dennis says, quote, "Deference does not mean the court must ignore the defendant's repeated refusal to provide even the most basic information as to any steps they have taken to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. But first things first, the plaintiffs will be allowed to conduct expedited discovery. And remember, we talked about the government declarations and not wanting to get subjected to contempt or discovery. Well, Judge Dennis is all over that. According to Anna Bauer, during the discussion about discovery, the judge said depositions will be completed by Wednesday, April 23rd, any impediment. The government lawyer Ensign said, quote, "We understand court's position." The judge said, "So that means no impediments?" Ensign says, "We don't know at this time who will be deposed." Dennis says, "No, I'm saying the people who you've put forward as affiants." Ensign says, "I'm not prepared to put forward objections at this time. One of the affiants is acting general counsel." To which the judge says, "You should have considered privilege when you put them up as an affiant, but if you have privilege objections, you can get them to me." In other words, the government made lawyers sign factual sworn statements for which they may or may not have personal knowledge. And if you have someone sign a declaration under oath, the court is allowed to test the veracity of those statements, and you've arguably waived privilege. Unlike, for example, when a lawyer has signed a brief, which isn't under oath, though it does have its own obligations. So Judge Dennis is signaling that she is not going to put up with objections to that discovery. And in fact, in the judge's order, she specifically calls out the 4 government affiants and says that the plaintiffs can depose them. And those depositions must be completed by April 23rd. fun. Now, after that contentious hearing, lawyer Heidi Feldman noticed that the court is following the exact same procedure that was used in Cabell versus Babbitt. In that case, the court found that the Department of the Interior had grossly mismanaged native trust funds and then failed to comply with prior court orders, actively misled the court, and even provided false information. This conduct implicated Treasury Secretary Robert Rubin and Interior Secretary Bruce Babbitt. The court issued an order to show cause why the government should not be held in contempt, and then held hearings to evaluate the evidence and hear testimony. And we talked about the standard of civil contempt in the video about Trump violating court orders. And in civil contempt, the aim is to typically force the contemner to comply with the court's directives. In the Cabell case, the court first had to consider whether the orders were clear and reasonably specific, and the government tried to argue, just as Ensign did here, that there was too much ambiguity for the government to understand how to comply. The court must then be persuaded by clear and convincing evidence that the contemner actually failed to comply. And importantly, you don't have to prove that the contemner intended to disobey the order. The focus is simply on whether they failed to meet the terms of the order. And in Cabell, the government didn't produce the required records, failed to implement accounting standards, and then failed to communicate transparently and in good faith with the court, which is why several times during the April 15th hearing, Judge Zenas warned the government that it needed to communicate with her in good faith. And in Cabell, both cabinet secretaries had to appear in court, and both were found in civil contempt. And the remedies included appointment of a special master to monitor compliance and independently review the agency's behavior, court supervision over native trusts, and a warning that future noncompliance would result in sanctions. So the bottom line here is that the Supreme Court approved most of what the judge ordered and cut it back based on what the court can and cannot do. The government is currently misrepresenting what the Supreme Court said, and is so far refusing to do what the court has required. Judge Zenas is moving forward, and she is pissed, and she's laying out the framework, like Judge Boasberg before her, to make life very difficult for the government. And we'll see who
Boasberg
wins
is the one
first.
that
It's particularly interesting to look at the media's response to the Supreme Court's order to
holding the
facilitate the
administration in contempt.
of Kilmar, Abrego, Garcia. About 450 sources covered the story, with only about 10% coming from the right, 60% coming from the center, and 30% coming from the left.
Important
and when
too,
you examine
even
the
though it's
headlines, you
bad.
see some very different frames emerge that shape how readers interpret and understand the Supreme Court's ruling. Headlines from the right are the most likely to put the word facilitate in quotes, which implies room for the Trump administration to interpret what actions constitute facilitating Garcia's return. But from the center, we see headlines like these that use the phrase must work to bring back instead, while also being more likely to use the language describing Garcia as wrongfully deported. And then from the left, headlines typically frame the court's ruling in stronger language, such as ordering the return of Garcia and overruling the Trump administration. Now, the headlines that you read first have immense power to shape how you understand the news, and that's why I like to see the news from as many angles as I can with the help of today's driven. You can scan the QR code Spectrum versus reporting, which I've heard of, where there's no telling who owns it or what agenda they might have. I also love their blind spot feature, which shows that 75% of the 200 Venezuelan immigrants recently transitioned to the El Salvadoran Gulag had no criminal record in the United States. This story was entirely ignored by the right-leaning sources, with the vast majority of sources coming from the left and center. And this type of analysis helps explain why we often talk past each other, and why some people seem hyper-focused on what seems like nonsense or fake news. But all this is why Ground News is my favorite way to get the news. And as a legal eagle, gives you unlocked form, working to make.
All right, legal.
That's it. Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just we'll see. I'm still in a place of like we'll see what happens next. I mean, until Garcia's back in the U.S., this is going to be a story.
Yeah, of course. This is not even close to over.
And it's probably just a matter of who's next, really.
No, yeah,
like
exactly.
that's like who's the next name that's going to come out that's going to be proven to be wrongfully deported.
Yeah,
that's it might be some. I don't know. I mean, who knows? It could be anybody.
Right.
At this rate.
No kidding. Especially if ICE is detaining U.S. citizens, it's like, it's here, folks. It's fucking here. Yeah. Then there's let's see. Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's literally like
what?
Right here. So Miguel Saar, a former member of the United States Subcommittee for the United Nations Subcommittee for the Prevention of Torture, described SICA as a concrete and steel pit used to dispose of people without formally applying the death penalty, citing that the government does not intend to release the prison's inmates. So, like, not only do people just fucking die there from neglect, not only are they tortured, it's like, what do they do with the bodies? And that's when people started looking into Google Maps. There is a disturbing image if you zoom in, and I think it's actually been censored out now. I don't know if it's on Apple Maps or Google Maps. I haven't actually looked myself. I've seen the images that have been shared around that show what appears to be a pile of bodies with a big red stain in like the lot that's near a couple of outhouses within the facility, and people are asking like, is this what we think it is? And I'm a lot of people are skeptical, but it looks way too much like basically a fucking slaughterhouse.
Right, Tim. So
Yeah.
ABS said, I saw a YouTube short of someone who covered comprehensive Google Maps imaging along with a timeline from when the prison was first constructed. All right. I have to check that out. I have to track that down.
Yeah. Nothing about it is clearly bodies won't enhance image went viral. I did see that one. It's like people trying to make it like seem that it is what we think it is, and
Right.
I mean, just the idea that it could be what we think it is beyond stress inducing. It's just like we're just working people to death, and they're just disposing of the bodies, and we know that people in there do not have criminal records. People are being sent there by mistake. It's just like, what if El Salvador and the United States are apprehensive to bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia back because he's fucking dead?
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
All right, man. I'm pretty
I'm
pretty wiped, but it's like, it's normal for me now. Like I'm not surprised by anything from this administration. It's just literal lawlessness. They just don't care about the rules, and they're going to deport whoever they, if we got it's good to be a small YouTube channel right now because we're not like a threat. If you're like a big YouTube channel, if you're like a big YouTube channel right now, you might get deported, man. Watch your back.
God, dude, I don't know what it is. Like this whole thing specifically, and the fact that like this prison exists, and all our like fucking leaders, and Elon Musk, and fucking Marco Rubio praise the president of El Salvador, praise this mega prison. It's just like, oh, this would be a good place to send American citizens to. The worst of the worst. And it's just like, well, like it shows you just how detached they are from any semblance of fucking humanity. Like, at all.
Absolutely.
Like I don't even think that we should like send our own criminals to a place where like for one, there's no fucking chance of rehabilitation. There's no chance that if you even like getting out, you're basically worked to death, and like there's like full neglect there. Like we saw in the documents being talked about in the beginning of the video. It's just like, this culmination of all these factors. I don't know what it is that I've just allowed it to get to me more so than I have since like the whole Doge takeover of various government entities and whatnot. It's just like it's fucking terrifying, and I get into these moods where it's like, okay, time to overthink about these things and figure out how to solve them, even though I'm just like this one fucking guy. It's just like it drives me fucking crazy. It's just like
powerlessness will drive you crazy. That's the problem. I mean, with powerlessness is you can't do anything about it.
Yeah,
the slaughterhouse was built by a veterinarian company that went bankrupt. Not only did they specialize in animal equipment, but they have euthanasia substances. There was also a pile of something that he's writing right now. But yeah, man, it's interesting that that this issue is firing you up so much. Because I guess now that it's happening, I guess it's understandable that you're getting fired up. But like, I mean, I knew something like this was just a matter of time. Like, I knew that the wrong people were going to get deported. Like, how many more Abrego Garcias are there in the system?
That's exactly what's been stressing me out. It's just like administrative error. Give me a fucking break. Like you're telling me that like it was a mistake that you guys sent this guy there. He wasn't supposed to be there. Who else is that going to happen to,
Right.
And then like of course my mind starts working a million miles an hour. It's just like, am I gonna be detained by ICE at some point? What if I want to go to Spain next year? Am I going to be allowed into the country? What if they search my phone? What if they determine that I'm a threat because I tend to criticize Trump or some shit? It's just like, Megan says they do kill anyone who tries to escape. I watched the documentary yesterday morning from soon after it opened. 80%
All right.
cells, but only time out of the cell is seated singing church songs or working, given vitamins and medications. But that seems propaganda-ish. Maybe. They did interview one prisoner whose foot was treated. And Megan says, "You're white." Oh, that's right. I forgot. Megan, you're the fucking best. Thanks. You've restored my confidence in myself.
What did she say? You're white?
Yeah, I have nothing to worry about after all. God, I almost forgot. Thanks, Megan. I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I'm ethnically ambiguous with my beard.
Right.
So maybe
right,
I should.
Yeah.
Maybe I have something to worry about.
Yeah. God.
All right. Any parting thoughts for our audience here? Because unless you want to stay on, I gotta go.
Oh no, I gotta get to band practice, so I'm taking off.
Oh wait, hold on. ABS had something.
A pile of potentially bodies.
The image was not rendered well despite numerous attempts. So as of right now, it's up in the air if the bodies are human beings, animals, or just something else. Dude, I mean, Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is the best. I mean, look at this dictator. Like, they're killing people, dude. They kill people. They don't care.
Right.
They're evil. This is evil.
Red pool next to this body, like it's. I mean, who fucking knows?
Yeah, it's unknown genocide. Like, people just don't know about it, but it's happening, and it happens all over the world.
Yeah, they're just grinding the undesirables into fertilizer and biodiesel. Like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. It's good for the economy. All right, for Stat Pat Stateless Patriot, I am Dieter McBusiness, reminding you to know the heart, but vote with the head. And you don't get change in America by asking nicely. See you later.
Have a good